Welcome, everybody. This is Christina Hawkins with the Moving Marketing Podcast. And today I've got Lyn Askin, who is our resident EOS expert. And I'm going to let Lyn introduce himself, talk a little bit about how he started, and then we'll get more into his story and his background, how he got into becoming an EOS implementer. So if you want to start, Lyn, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. You are my third guest on my very new podcast. So hopefully everybody in the moving industry will get some really great benefits. I know I've used EOS in a very small format. My team is still rather small. I have an understanding of EOS and I've seen some of the tools and they're really, really great. And I believe in it. So I thought I would introduce the moving industry to EOS. So yeah, Lyn, tell me about yourself.
Cool. Thanks, Christina. I really appreciate being on the call, and I love talking about EOS because I love helping small business owners trying to achieve that freedom that they originally wanted when they started their business. I mean, most of us start our businesses because we want some sort of semblance of freedom, whether it's financial freedom or time freedom or any of those things. And quite frankly, for most of us, that's not really how it goes. The reality is much different. Business owners invest a lot of time. They sacrifice for their families. They risk incredible financial risk. Uh, have to deal with team and clients and all those things. And I want to help people get that freedom that they originally desired when they started their businesses. So I'm a professional EOS implementer, and I help people implement the entrepreneurial operating system.
Awesome. Tell me how you got into this. How did you get into the EOS system and a little about your story?
Very cool. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I had a paper route when I was 9 years old. I delivered the Las Vegas Review Journal. I grew up in a house full of love. We had a lot of love in our house, and not a lot of money. And so for the things that I wanted, my parents gave me everything I needed. But it's never everything you want. And so for a kid who wanted things, I needed to earn money, and it made me entrepreneurial. And so again, I had a paper out when I was 9, uh, started a mobile disc jockey company in my teens. I started building computers in my early 20s. I built one of the first online auctions in 1996, built an e-commerce store in 1997, and then I just started helping other business owners, kind of get online and kind of navigate what was relatively new sort of internet thing in that era, and built a fairly successful marketing agency over the years. Um, but you know, had the same challenges that everybody else had in businesses. Had maybe a lack of clear vision about who we were and who we served. Maybe there was I don't know, I guess a lackluster team
Right.
commitment on. I guess that was probably because of a lack of clear vision and systems and processes.
Mhm.
And then, of course,
I
I
think
think that we
every
had a.
person starts out, I think every entrepreneur starts out that way. They
Oh,
love a thing that they do, but it's the other side of the business. But yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And then I also think there was probably a lack of discipline and accountability. But despite all that, we run a pretty successful business, have a really good life. I spent a lot of family time. I have a son who is the light of my life, and I've never missed a spelling bee. I've never missed a math Olympics. I've never missed a karate class. I've never missed a piano recital. And so I was
Wow.
in his life, and we sort of had a really good relationship. But in 2020, Christina, I collapsed in my yard. I got the wake up call of all wake up calls. I had a massive bilateral pulmonary embolism. And
Oh.
so as I laid there dying, all I could think about was, what kind of mess did I just leave my wife and son?
Hmm.
My wife was going to have to go to the office. She's going to have to lock the door. She was going to have to fire all of our team. She would have lost all of our clients. And that would have been the legacy that I left them. And
That's scary.
that's just not good enough. And obviously, thank God I survived, and I'm still kind of trying to figure out why. But I know I'm here for a reason. But what I knew is I knew I had to do something different. And my first instinct was, man, I've got to sell this business. Uh, and I'm not sure if you know this or not, Christina, but you can't sell a job.
No, no,
And so,
no.
and the truth is, if you
No
if
one
you
wants
have
your
a
job.
business,
No one wants a job. Yeah.
Yeah, if your
They
business
want a business.
relies on you to survive, you don't have a business, you have a job. And so I knew that I had to do something different. I knew I had to build some structure. I knew I had to build something that I could take myself out of the day-to-day operations. And
Mhm.
that's when I found EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So, I
That's
was
awesome.
looking for something that would help me build structure in my business. Found the book Traction, tried to self-implement EOS and struggled with that a bit.
Mhm.
Hired a professional EOS implementer, and over the next year and a half, just had a remarkable transformation. We
That's amazing.
3x'd our revenue, we 7x'd our profits, we grew from 10 employees to 27.
Mhm.
Took myself out of the day-to-day operations where I wasn't having to have my hands in everything because I built a great leadership team,
Mhm.
ultimately leading to a successful acquisition of my company. And I fell in love with all of it. I fell in love with the entire process. I fell in love with the EOS and what it did for me and for my family.
Mhm.
And I want to help other entrepreneurs and business owners sort of achieve that same sort of success and feeling of the legacy that I was able to create.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I've been doing this for 25 plus years, but I started out in the Defense Department, right? It's a logistician and got a poli sci degree. And so I'd always been an entrepreneur at heart, had all kinds of jobs and little side gigs going. But when I married a Marine, I had to figure it out pretty quickly because I wasn't going to get a job to job to job every 2 years and be a secretary for the rest of my life. And so without any formal business training is the thing. So it's always been just, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially movers, and I'll say movers, the story that I'm hearing from movers is they worked as a mover and then they started their own moving company. That's usually, and they're
Mhm.
still movers at heart. They're still a mover. They don't think of themselves as business owners or CEOs. There's a couple of them that do. They've kind of made that mental transition, but it's still a job to many, many of them. And I think having that conversation with you and helping people understand in order to separate yourself, you have to have some kind of system. And EOS, I think, is a great system. I think it helps build the foundation because you never know. You want to be able to hand this off to somebody, and so that your family is cared for, in the long run. So I think it's a really great lessons learned. But tell me more. Explain what EOS is and how it can benefit businesses. And if you kind of tweak it toward moving companies, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. No, happy to do that. And so, just kind of going back to part of your conversation is, if a mover starts a moving company because he sees, an opportunity, he's sort of visionary, like all of us sort of entrepreneurs. We see opportunity in things, and we see ways that we can help people. And but what does that mover do when he has two jobs on one day or three jobs on one day? Or what happens if your marketing is really good? And what happens if you deliver great product and service and you start getting referrals? And now you've got to figure out, how the heck am I going to create a clone of myself? How am I going to break through that ceiling that I'm stuck at because I don't have enough bandwidth to do two jobs or three jobs at a time? And so EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system. It is a framework on how to put systems in place and in ways to grow your business. And as a professional implementer, I help visionaries and entrepreneurs get better at three things. Help them get better at vision, and this is about you know getting you and your leadership team 100% on the same page with where you're going and how you're going to get there. I think for any of us, to get to from point A to point B, we got to know what point B looks like.
Yeah, a lot of people struggle with that. When I ask people, what are your goals for this year? What do you want to accomplish this year? It's the first thing that comes out of their mind is I want more leads. And that's the first thing. Of course, they're calling a marketer, so of course that's what's on their mind. But you always have to drive a little bit deeper into that question of, well, what are your goals? Do you want to hire somebody? Do you want to get another truck in the next year? Do you want to get a salesperson this year so you can step back and do more of the ops stuff? And those kinds of questions. And they never. It's like, well, it hasn't hit them yet, but those are questions they need to start thinking about. But yeah.
So then, after the vision component, so we help you develop a great vision and have that vision shared by all. And then we work on the traction part of this. And this is where we help you instill the discipline and accountability so that no matter where you look in your company, you see your team and your people executing on that vision. And then we don't ignore team health, and we want to, so we help you get better and get healthier. And that means making you and your leadership team a more cohesive, functional, leadership team who actually likes to work together. Because let's be honest, sometimes we don't. And so the operating system itself is designed to help you get more of what you want from your business. And so, we focus on kind of building the business that you really want.
Mhm. That's awesome. What are some of the core components of EOS? So if I were starting out, how can I apply some of the EOS at this point? Some of the people I work with are maybe a year or two in business. Some of them are 5 years in business, or kind of there's a bit of a mix. Um, Let me just ask that first question. What are the core components of EOS?
Okay, so I would say that there are some foundational tools of EOS, but when we talk about EOS, we actually look at your business at something we call the EOS model.
Mhm.
And when we think about us as entrepreneurs, I think we're all kind of built the same way. We're all used to the chaos a little bit. We kind of thrive in a little bit. Some of our best days are those days where everything's just happening and like we're just cruising along and we're getting our stuff done. And some of the worst days are the days where we're just sitting around going, "Gosh, what am I going to do today?" And so we're all kind of built the same way. But we say that all entrepreneurs are sort of used to dealing with 136 simultaneous issues, but those issues are really just symptoms of a real root cause. And if you can focus on strengthening each of these six key components of your business, all of those kind of 136 issues just sort of tend to fall into place. And so let me talk you through the six key components of EOS. Number one is the vision component. This is about, once again, getting you and your team 100% on the same page with where you're going and how you're going to get there. We have the people component. This is about making sure we have the right people in the right seats in your business. We then have the data component, and this is where we're going to run your business on real facts and figures and numbers and metrics, and not emotions and subjective, decision making that so often drives our decision making process in an entrepreneurial business. And then once we have your vision component strong and your people component strong and your data component strong, Christina, your moving business is going to become more transparent. You're going to start to see the issues, the obstacles, the problems, and those things are just going to kind of start to come out. And so we've got to teach you how to be really, really good at solving those problems as they arise. So we focus on strengthening your issues component. And that's about being able to take those issues and solve them at the root, make them go away forever. So we're not dealing with that same problem over and over and over again. Now, the fifth key component is your business is the process component. We think that every business has just a handful of core processes, and so we want to figure out what those core processes are. We want to document them at a kind of a high level because we want to make sure that anybody who touches one of our core processes is doing it the right way and the best way every time. This is what's going to allow us to scale. This is what's going to allow us to have repeatable processes that we can build once and then have repeated by our team. And we got to make sure that those processes are being followed by all. And then the
Yeah.
last component, the sixth key component, is the traction component. This
Uh-huh.
is where we bring all of that vision down to the ground and we execute on it with discipline and accountability. Because if we like to say that vision without traction is hallucination.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I can see that. With what I do too, my biggest struggle is the vision. I'm always about like the day to day. And so I've always struggled with like seeing myself out in 3 to 5 to 10 years. It's like it'll come fast enough. That's
There's
always I've
something
mhm.
there's something really powerful. I'm sorry to interrupt. There's something
No,
really powerful about setting a compelling vision for your company, not only for you, but for your team and for your
right.
leadership team. It is difficult to get and hire and retain top talent. And
Mm-hmm.
if you have top talent and they don't see a future for themselves in your company, they don't see you growing and they don't see a future for themselves, they're
Mm-hmm.
going to move on and it's going to cause turmoil in your company. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can build a really compelling vision about what this company is going to look like, we're going to build you a big, hairy, audacious goal. What's that company look like 5, 7, 10 years from now?
Right.
We're going to step back from that. And we're going to build a 3-year picture. And we're going to predict your revenue and your profit and your measurables. And then we're going to decide what exactly does this company look like just 3 years from now. We're going to build a picture of that so we can all
A little bit
visualize.
more short
Yeah.
term. Yeah. Doable
because
goals too. I think sometimes the big audacious goals, I don't know, for me, it's too out there. I don't even want to think about trying to, but if I can do a 3 year goal and have, I might not meet the goal, but if I can at least put some elements in place to get to that 3 year vision, I feel like it's more doable and it's
right.
more immediate. Um,
Yeah,
but definitely
100%.
having the right people. That's what I'm finding out too. And I'm finding out when I'm working with more and more moving companies, I can see the fracture sometimes is they don't have the right people in the right place. And I'm on the outside looking in. So I think it's definitely something that these guys need to really take a handle on and really ask themselves those really tough questions. And I think, like you're saying, the vision, the people, and the data, that's it. The data is huge for me. Rarely do they have the right data. Rarely. They might have like an operational CRM, like a tool called Smart Moving. And then I come in with something like a high level where we're getting even more data. But that's when it gets hard for them is that those questions of like, well, we sent you this and you're telling me 20 people didn't convert. Why is that? It becomes a hard question. Did the salesperson do their job? Is the script right? Is the issues now start
Right.
becoming very clear?
Right, right. When you start looking at real numbers and real facts and figures, you start to find issues and challenges. But the data component in EOS is really about the leadership team understanding each department. And so every member of the team needs to have some sort of KPI metric that they're being held accountable for. And so when you look at your dashboard, I want you as the CEO of your moving company, I want you to know, hey, are we having a good week or a bad week in sales? Are we having
When
a
do
good
you
week or a
this
bad week in marketing? Are
when
we
do you
having a good week or bad week in
yeah.
operations?
Yeah. And that's a weekly conversation as well. That's another thing too, is you got to step the team aside and say, okay, here's where we had last week. Here's the goals for this week from an issue standpoint. And, of course, the rocks, the pebbles, the stones, those kind of things
Of
too.
course, of course.
Where if where do you start with EOS? Where, like, if I'm a moving company and I'm struggling and I want to go from 1 million to 3 million, um, what are some EOS? When do I start EOS? I don't think EOS is good for a mom and pop, like a husband and wife team. That's too small. When can EOS be implemented? At what stage?
So you know, in EOS, we have kind of a target market, and this is kind of the 80% of who I think this works best for. And these are entrepreneurial companies, privately owned, between 10 and 250 employees.
Okay.
I have teams that are smaller than 10 that have implemented EOS very, very successfully. But what you really need, and the core piece of this, is you need to build a leadership team. You need to have a handful of people. It can't just be you, the visionary, installing EOS. It's
Mm-hmm.
got to be you. It's got to be, your head of sales or marketing. It's got to be a sort of a head of operations or a head of finance. It's got to be a core group of people that have the best interests of the company in mind,
Got
that
it.
not only build the vision for the future, but actually run and operate this business in such a way that we can make it better.
Right. So how then can EOS kind of help moving companies streamline their operations? And I think also another key factor then is customer satisfaction. I mean, that becomes really crucial. I tell people when they first come out, they're like, I've only been in business for a month. I've had people, I'm like, well, we're not ready. You're not ready to do marketing with me, but let's talk about that. And I always tell them the first thing you have to do is be like the best mover you can be always. And I think that just permeates as they grow. That's where it gets hard though, because now we start separating the owner from the actual work being done. I think that's where EOS helps in to maintain that customer satisfaction. But yeah, tell me how it can help.
Oh man, EOS can help you in so many ways. Again, when we talk about the vision, setting the big, hairy, audacious goal, which is kind of our North Star. This is where we're headed.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got to break that down into a 3-year picture. Then we break it down into a 1-year plan. And we set some 1-year goals. Then we move back and we work in a 90-day world, and we create what we call rocks. And rocks are just our biggest business priorities for the next 90 days. And we create 3 to 7 company rocks, not 37, 3 to 7 company rocks, because when everything's important, nothing's important. And so we got to get really, really good at predicting what are the most important things that we need to get done in our business the next 90 days. And so we can focus on getting those things done. There's a ton of tools in EOS. There's really two tools or disciplines in each one of those six key components that we put in place. But there are really five foundational tools of EOS, and that is, our sort of one page or two page vision traction organizer. That's where we keep the answer to the eight questions we've asked about. What are your core values? What is your core focus? What is your core target? What is your 3-year picture? 1-year plan? What is your marketing strategy? What are your rocks? What are your issues list? That's one of the foundational tools. The next foundational tool is really your accountability chart. And this is, what is this company going to look like in the next 6 to 12 months? And so we want to map out your future. We want to build the accountability chart of the company that you want to own so we can see visually where we're deficient, where we need help, where we need to hire, where we need to take myself out of that, sort of lower dollar role that I'm doing, where I can focus on the high dollar tasks of being a visionary, creating big relationships, being the face of the company, being at conferences, being on stages, being on podcasts. And so, um, that's the next key component. The next is really rocks. And again, that's making sure that we're every 90 days, we're setting our business priorities and we're coming up with our top 3 to 7 biggest business priorities. And then we talk about our scorecard. Now, our scorecard, I want you to think of it like a dashboard. I want you to be able to look at that scorecard and I want you to understand and have a real pulse on your business. So let's imagine just for a minute that you're on a deserted island and you have your moving company and you're there and you're by yourself. You don't have access to the outside world. You can't call the office, can't send an email, can't send a text. Your cabana boy or cabana girl brings you a frosty beverage and a piece of paper. On that piece of paper is a list of numbers. It's sort of your scorecard for your business. I need you to be able to look at that scorecard and know and have an absolute pulse on your business. Are we having a
Healthy,
good week or are we
not
having a bad
healthy.
week?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is so you got to know. You got to know if your sales department's having a good week. You got to know if your marketing department's having a good week. You got to know if operations having a good week. You got to know if your customers are having a good week. You got to know if your employees are having a good week or bad week. And so we
Hmm.
help you develop that metric and scorecard. Now, the leadership team scorecard is a little bit like the dashboard in your car. So if you get in, you turn on your ignition, you
Hmm.
got some lights pop up and you got a little bit of data there that tells you about your car, tells
Hmm.
you like how many miles you got in the car, tells you if you've got enough gas to get to your destination or not.
Hmm.
It'll even tell you if your tires are inflated properly, if you got a flat tire or not.
Right.
It's also a check engine light, right? And when that check engine light comes on, we know we've got an issue. We got to know we've got a problem. And I want your scorecard to reflect that. What it doesn't tell you is, what's the ignition timing of the timing belt or what's the, compression on this particular cylinder. That's a little too complex for your
Right.
leadership team scorecard.
Right.
I just want you to have a pulse on your business and on each department to know if their check engine light's on,
Mhm.
essentially. And I want
Yeah.
you to have that weekly because if you look at your numbers weekly, you've got 52 chances to catch that problem. You look at your numbers quarterly, you only have 4 chances. Look at a
Hmm.
monthly, you've only got 12 chances to fix that problem. And by
Hmm.
that time, that problem has hit your profit and loss statement. And
It's
so
too late.
we
Yeah.
really focus on getting your numbers right, understanding what's supposed to happen in your business, and is it happening? And
Right.
if it's not happening, we drop that thing down to what we call our issues list, and we get to the last key component of, or the last foundational tool of EOS, which is your meeting pulse.
Right.
Every week, you're going to get together with your leadership team and you're going to have a great meeting. So when I ask people, it's one of the first things we ask in what we call our 90-minute meeting is rate your meetings, your team meetings on a scale of 1 to 10. Inevitably, I get fours and fives every time.
Hmm.
People hate meetings. Meetings are terrible because what happens is people get in those meetings and we got some pretty smart people around and they talk and they talk and they talk and they discuss and rarely do we ever solve anything. And so the level 10 meeting is a great meeting structure for how you have a great meeting.
Hmm.
We're going to check on the most important things in our business. We're going to check on our scorecard. We're going to check on our rocks. We're going to check on our customers, employees, and then we're going to spend a good portion of the time solving the issues that we have in our business.
Oh, wow. Jeez. So what kind of challenges do you think movie companies might have implementing this? I'm assuming we're starting with a movie company with about 10 people.
Okay. So yes, some of the challenges you might have, EOS is simple, but not easy. So implementing EOS is it's a simple set of practical tools. It's not magic beans or silver bullets. This is timeless concepts that have been around for 100 years, going to be
Right.
around for 1,000 more. But when you try to take yourself out of working on in the business or whatever, and you put yourself in like the integrator role or the implementer role, and you're trying to implement,
Hmm.
you don't get to participate in the meeting, and you've taken one of your key employees, whether it's you or a director of operations, and you're making them try to learn a whole new system to implement. It is a little challenging. Um, and in a lot of cases, we know visionaries. Visionaries have 1,000 ideas. Visionaries come to every meeting with 100 ideas.
Hmm.
And so when you, as the visionary of your company, bring this new thing into your team and like, hey, team, here's this new thing we're going to do, the team's going to roll their eyes, right? It happens to
Right.
us all the time.
Sure, sure.
And so having a third party implementer come in and be the voice of EOS, and it's no longer some new idea that Christina's got. Oh no, here she goes again, another idea. What are we going to do now?
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it it's really about getting that team to buy into the process and want that structure and want that discipline, because accountable people love a system that will help them become better and stronger and faster.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, I think too. Also, when it comes to these challenges, it's a moving target sometimes, and it's also in the moving industry. There's a lot of peaks and valleys. Summer is very very high, and then winter we kind of slow down a lot. And I think some of the challenges they tend to contract a lot of the movers. A few of them do hire full time, and so they'll say they have 10 or 15, but really about half of them are contracted movers. How can we kind of maintain that challenge of building the team, having the vision when you have those kind of peaks and valleys in 1 year? Do you
Yeah, well,
think?
I just see that as an issue that we have to put in
Okay,
on the table during the leadership team meeting and say, hey,
right.
how do we handle this? And the truth is I'm not a consultant. And so
Yeah.
I facilitate the questions, I facilitate the room.
You don't have the answers.
You guys come to the right conclusion because you guys are
Right.
pretty smart and you
Yeah.
have the answer.
Yeah.
Just really good at pulling those out at you and kind
Yeah.
of putting them into a cohesive answer that actually solves the problem.
Right. So it sounds like too that EOS kind of helps even from a fundamental level achieving kind of those business goals, because I think also these folks don't, again, back to the whole concept of the vision, we lack that opportunity of like, this year I went this, next year is that business goal, and it's not always about money. I think we talked earlier was, do we want to get a new truck? Do I want to hire a salesperson? Do I want to get a warehouse? So how can EOS kind of help us achieve those types of goals?
So again, EOS is really about helping you get more of what you want from your business. And part of implementing EOS is deciding what it is that we want
Mm-hmm.
and where are we going long term. And so once again, what does our North Star look like? Where are we going? What's the big picture? Where are we, what's the big, hairy, audacious goal? That one thing that drives us.
Mm-hmm.
But then we've got to be able to break that down. We can't just, okay, I'm gonna make $1 billion. Well, why? We got to
Why?
figure out what is that if that is what you want,
Mm-hmm.
where we got to be in 3 years, where do
Right.
we got to have to be in 1 year, and then where do we have to be in the next 90 days to feel like we're on track to doing that? Now, this is a process, and so this is a learning process, and you're going to be terrible at your first set of rocks. You're going to be terrible at your first scorecard. That's part of the process. We're going to learn from it,
It's
but we give you the
uncomfortable.
tools to learn.
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable to do this work. I've been involved in companies that went through that. Now I've been from the outside looking in. I've seen it, and as part of an executive board, and I'm watching them, and it's uncomfortable. You can see people shifting in their seats because they're not sure of the answer. They don't know. They know they want this. Let's just say a warehouse for temporary storage. They know they want this, but no one's quite sure how to reach the goal. And that's where the data comes in too. It's like, well, we can't do it this year. We don't have the revenue. And based on our current leads and conversions, we don't have a sales. So we have to put that's a 3-year goal, but it's uncomfortable because you really wanted the warehouse. You wanted the extra truck. And you realize as you're looking at this, you're going, maybe that's not going to happen right now, but it's good to know, I
Well,
think.
that's really about taking a giant list of things that you could do
Yeah.
and prioritizing and
Yeah.
getting really, really good at deciding which are the top 3 to 7 things we're actually going to do this quarter.
Right.
Which are the biggest priorities?
Right.
Maybe that warehouse is the biggest priority. And if it is, we know what we want. Now we got to figure out how to go to get it. We have
Hmm.
to figure out what we need to do. What do we need to do, put in place? What are the next steps? What are the milestones? How are we going to make that happen?
Right.
And that's going to be a project for us for the next 90 days.
And
Um,
that's where you go back into the weekly conversations and weekly L10 meetings. That like, did we accomplish this week's goal of the rock to get to our ultimate goal of a warehouse?
Yeah,
And
when
keeping
we
everybody on
examine our
track.
big priorities and we do it every week, we want to know, hey, are we on track or off track? And I urge my teams to get really, really comfortable being honest. And so if
Mm-hmm.
your project is off track, I mean, certainly if you say it's on track, we just go, okay, thanks, and we go on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
But is it?
Mm-hmm.
If it's not on track, let's be honest. Let's say because it is our biggest business priority,
Mm-hmm.
and I can say, hey, look, I don't know if I'm on track to get this done by the due date. I need some help. Let's drop this down to the issues list.
Mm-hmm.
Team, I need some help. What do you guys think? Here's some challenges that I'm facing. Here's my roadblock. How do you think we get around that? Let's get this rock back on track. And so we give you the framework to do all of that. So one of the things I'm going to caution is you got to be really, really careful about what you ask for because with the EOS, you're going to get it.
Oh, I think it also leads down that path. My other question about leadership is you have to have a very strong leadership that is willing to listen. So you can't be, again, it's uncomfortable, and that the rest of the team is going to be uncomfortable because this will be new for them. And also keeping people on track and accountable. I think that was part of your, some of the things we wanted people and being accountability for each person, but then feeling comfortable enough to go, I'm not meeting my goal. But then leadership has to be okay with them saying that. Everybody has to be okay saying, I'm not going to meet my goal, so that we all work together to figure out why can't you meet the goal. And that there's a bit of honesty there that I think sometimes is missing on both parts. So how can leadership help successfully implement this and get people comfortable with being uncomfortable?
So there is a there Patrick Lencioni basically talks about how most of us spend a lot of time in our business trying to be smart and not enough time trying to be healthy. And by
Mm,
health, I mean team health. I mean about having an open and honest environment in which everybody in our team is willing to raise a hand and say, hey, I've got an issue here.
mm-hmm,
And here's something in the company that I think can be better, or here's a mistake that I made and I own it, but it's an issue. And I don't believe that issues have feelings. It's just an issue. And so let's throw that issue out on the table. Let's be open and honest. Here's the problem. Here's where and then let's discuss how do we think we fix this?
mm-hmm,
Because in a great leadership team, the challenges that we have and the problems that we have are not between us, they're in front of us. And so
mm-hmm.
let's throw that issue out on the table and let's tackle it and let's be willing to be open and honest. So we've got to create a culture that it's okay to raise your hand and say, I've got an issue here.
Wow. Yeah. What are ways that we can kind of improve on that with that communication, with that process? What are some collaboration tools that you might recommend?
Certainly think that having the right people in the right seats is a huge part of this. And so when I talk about again, when I talk about right people,
Mm-hmm.
I mean people that live our core values. And so when we do a core value exercise with you, we pull out the core values of your team, and then we have to live them. We got
Mm-hmm.
to hire with them. We got to fire with them. We got to reward with them. We got to recognize with them, right? We got to review our clients or with our employees with them. And so core values are an essential set of guiding principles of what it's like to be a great employee at this moving company. And so when we create our core values and we surround ourselves with people who exemplify those core values, now we know we've got the right people.
Right.
Now we've got to make sure those people are in the right seats. And by right seats, I mean, do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have the response? Do they have the capacity to do the job?
Yeah.
And so capacity, what I mean is, do they have the mind for it? Do they
Mm-hmm.
have the heart for it? And sometimes do they have the stomach for it? Right? Do they have the physical capability to do the job
Mm-hmm.
of a mover?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, do they have the capacity
Stamina.
to do this job? And if
Right.
we get the right people in the right seats and we work on that team honesty and open and honest, and we do that in our sessions every time, it just becomes a part of you
Right.
because we're
Yeah.
all, to be honest, we all want the same thing. We all want to have we want to have a job where we're working with people that we love,
Mhm.
We're doing what we love. We are having an impact on people. We're being appropriately compensated, and we actually have time for other interests. That's what
Yeah.
we all want.
Yeah. So align with that. What are some things that, we talk about the dashboard, what are some things that you think, and I know that, you haven't quite specifically worked with a moving company, but I think this is pretty general across the board with any entrepreneur or any business owner is from a KPI standpoint. If you've got people on your team, what are some of those components or dashboards that I'm looking at? Are those two separate things? A dashboard is a leadership where I'm seeing the health of my company, but do KPIs, which are key performance indicators, do they feed into the dashboard as part of the dashboard, right?
Sure. Let me
Okay.
let me explain that. So in
Yeah.
EOS, we call it our scorecard. So we have a leadership team scorecard, and let's
Mhm.
start with the leadership team, and that's just the handful of people kind of at the top of the company. Again, the leadership team has to know if each of those departments is doing having a good week.
Mhm.
When you roll that discipline down into the next level of your team, maybe you have a sales team scorecard, and that scorecard is going to reflect, are those team members doing, are they living up to the role in responsibility that we've listed for them in the accountability chart? Are they doing the job they're supposed to be doing? Are they making the sales calls they need to make? Are they having the success they're supposed to have? Are they following up the way they're supposed to follow up? Um, and so everybody on a team can technically have some sort of metric or measurable that they are responsible for reporting every single week, because we got to make sure that our teams are healthy and that they're doing their jobs. And as a 26, 27-year business owner, my tolerance, I guess, for employees who just won't do the work or don't want to work is almost zero these days.
Mhm.
It's hard out there for us as business owners. We're sacrificing everything. We
Mhm.
need to have team members who buy in,
Mhm.
who want to have a great career, who want to be here and want to do the work. And so um, there's a great quote, and it's by August Turk, and he said that employees respect what management inspects.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
we have to have a way to inspect
Mhm.
to make sure that our team members are doing the things they're supposed to be doing. And
Mhm.
employees will respect that if we inspect it.
Yeah, and you have to call them out on it, not in a mean way, but you kind of have to, hey, point out the things that, hey, you're not meeting the goals. Let's have a conversation. And then I don't know how many chances do you give them, and you're like, hey, this isn't working out. But I think it's the same adage of slow to hire, quick to fire. But I think having EOS implemented and having those scorecards in place helps you fire faster. And then I think also raise up folks that are doing well with the scorecard, their leadership potential, possibly, I don't know, but it gives you that really good bird's eye view of your staff and the leadership and what they're doing. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I have a tiny bit different take on the hire
You do.
fast, hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's important because I do think that feedback needs to be given quickly. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
if you go tell somebody about something they did last week, it's really easy for them to sort of wiggle out of it. And I want you to praise, I want you to praise in public, and I want you to
Mm-hmm.
criticize in private.
Right. Of course.
But I want that to come swiftly. I want to know, hey, like for you
Mm-hmm.
to know if an employee sort of made a mistake or isn't meeting their numbers, you have to inspect what they're doing.
Right.
And so it's not micromanagement. It's just a
Yeah.
simple set of tools that'll help you have a better gauge on that. Now we do have a sort of a three strike system in EOS that we teach that teaches you how to have great conversations with your team about where they're falling short, where they're succeeding, and what it looks like to be a better employee. And we have performance improvement there and ways that we can help them be better. Because if you have the right people, these are people who fit your core values that you want to be around. They're just genuinely good people. They're not always in the right seat, and we got to make sure that we have either a right seat for them, or we help them get better at that role. We give them the tools to be better. Because quite frankly, I hear the word accountability a lot. Like I'm like, "Hey, Lynn, help me hold my team accountable," and I'm like,
I
accountability is a
used it.
byproduct
Right.
of leadership and management.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership plus management equals accountability. You can't have accountability if you're not a great leader and not a great manager.
Mm-hmm.
And so we teach you how to be a great leader, teach you how to be a great manager, which
Mm-hmm.
equals great accountability.
Wow. What would you recommend for a scorecard for moving companies? So definitely from a leadership level, obviously sales is to me pretty obvious, marketing as well. What other kind of scorecards or KPIs would you recommend that we could implement? Even if I'm starting out, I think also even if I'm not implemented EOS, I think having a scorecard so that I get the data, the people, the vision, at least those first three parts in place. What would you recommend?
Sure. So a scorecard to me is honestly a little bit like that dashboard in the car I talked about.
Sure.
And the exercise that I would ask you to do is draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper. And
Mm-hmm.
let's just take one of those departments, whether it's sales or marketing or operations or customer service or customer satisfaction. And I want you to write on the right-hand side of that, what does a good week look like?
Mm-hmm.
What does a good week in customer service look like?
Mm-hmm.
What does a bad week in customer service look like? And
Mm-hmm.
so, let's just kind of write that out. And I'm sure we can come up with a metric that maps directly to what a good week looks like in those departments. And I want you to understand how those metrics affect, your customer satisfaction and things like that. And so, and the other thing that we do, obviously, is we take a particular role. I don't know what it would be, just any role in a moving company, and we say, okay, in this seat, what are the 5 or 6 most important things that that particular person in that seat needs to focus on every week?
Mm-hmm.
And you can say, okay, so if it's a salesman, we need more sales. So actual sales calls, that's number one. Number two is maybe follow up. Number three is maybe lead generation or whatever those
Sure.
are.
Sure.
And then we can take each one of those actual roles and we say, okay, how do we know if he's having a good week in sales calls? What's
Mm-hmm.
the number that we can track, or what's the goal here for them to hit every week?
Mm-hmm.
And so now we know, did they make the sales calls or not?
Right.
Did they do the follow up or not? Did they, do the cold
That
outreach
needs
or
to be
not? Or
tracked too. I think people forget that you have to have a method of tracking this. He can't just tell you I called 5 people. So I feel like this is all part of, you have to have an implement software that everybody uses at the same time, and we all put our numbers in, and so we all see what everybody's, again, it just, everybody needs to see what everybody's doing. Of course, having conversations in private if we're not meeting the goals, but still tracking, getting the data. I struggle with that with a lot of these guys. They don't track it. They just assume that they called, or they'll put it in smart moving that they called. But even on the other side of it is how many follow-ups were there. Well, we typically do 2 or 3 follow-ups. I'm like, I get the typical, but how many did you do? That's where there's a
right.
disconnect in there half the time. And then when you extrapolate that out into the actual project manager and the guy that's in charge of a move, how many times did you communicate with this person and text them that you're on the way? Did you get sign off? Did you have a walkthrough? What are all the things that we did, and did you accomplish that? And track it, yes or no? Yes. And like I don't know. I feel like someone needs to create this, like a little offboarding checklist after you've moved somebody. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. How many times, and just like track that kind of stuff. I feel like there's a disconnect sometimes. It's always a feeling that they have.
So
Did
each
you do
each
this?
measurable
He,
in my
he's
mind,
supposed to.
yeah, each measurable in my mind has to have a couple of components. It's got to be the thing that we want to track.
Mm-hmm.
We need to set a goal for that, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody needs to own it.
Mm-hmm.
Who's responsible for that metric? And
Mm-hmm.
so when you hold people accountable to that, and everybody is supposed to report that scorecard metric every week, and then we have our scorecard kind of filled out. And so
Yeah.
again, this is probably getting a little in the weeds of how to do it, but at the end of the day, how do we know if we're winning? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you went to a sporting event and there was no scoreboard and you just saw people running around on a field, how do you know who's winning?
Right. There's no
How do you
stop. Yeah.
there's no scorecard, there's no scoreboard. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes those sort of things enjoyable, is the thrill of the sort of the competition. There's a great story about Charles Schwab back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He was the CEO of Bethlehem Steel, and he went to his lowest producing steel plant. And in that steel plant, they were really struggling. They were trying to figure out why. And so he asked the day shift supervisor, "How many heats did you guys produce today?" And the shift supervisor said 6. So Charles got out a 6, and he wrote a big 6 on the floor of the shop.
Mm-hmm.
swing shift supervisor came in and said, "Hey, what's that?" And he said, "Oh, that's how many heats that the day shift produced. When they came back in the morning, the 6 was crossed out and there was a 7."
Oh,
Every day, pretty soon it was
yeah.
10, pretty soon it was 12, pretty soon this was the highest producing steel plant in Bethlehem steel history.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
accountable people love a system that will help them grow and be better and compete.
Yeah.
Non-accountable people will hate it and they will self-select and they will move on.
Mm-hmm.
But your team will love an ability to show that they're doing great work.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. That's a great story, by the way. I have to remember that one. So, how would you help out a moving company that's considering EOS in their business? Like, what are some of the first steps that you would recommend?
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk about what it looks like to implement EOS.
Mm-hmm.
So I think your first step in any way, shape, or form would be to either buy or listen to or read the book Traction.
Mm-hmm.
Traction by Gino Wickman is the operating system for EOS. It describes the system. It talks you about what you need to do and how you need to implement it. And again, it is difficult to self-implement in such a way that you need somebody on your team to really understand the system so you can hold people accountable. If you're a visionary and you're more of an audible person, I would say listening to the audiobook of a book called Get a Grip.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're a visionary, that book is a really good explanation of EOS. It's a fable of a company who implemented EOS, and they tell the story of how they had their sessions and how they implemented and what effect it had on the team. And we had one difficult team member and how they dealt with that. And it's a really cool story. Aside from that, I'm available for you to just send me a message, ask me questions.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, and if you're interested in EOS, let's just jump on a quick 5 or 10 minute call and just see if this might be a good fit for you. This is not a sales pitch. It's not a high pressure thing. Ultimately, if you think, hey, this might be a good fit for you, what we'll do is we'll schedule a 90-minute meeting with me and your team,
Mm-hmm.
no charge. I'll come in and I'll present EOS. I'm going to learn about you. You're going to learn about me. I'm going to open up the fire hose and I'm going to show you the entire EOS system. And then I'll show you what it would be like to work with me as your implementer.
Right.
And again, no pressure. If this is a good fit for you, let's do it. If it's not, let's not.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I if I have to drag you into EOS, I'm gonna have to drag you around in EOS, and I don't want to do
Not
that.
going to
So
work. It's hard
look,
enough as
look,
it is. I mean, like I said, I just for my business, I've done it's bits and pieces of it. I have not implemented EOS fully. I plan to. I'm just not mentally there yet. My team is still very distributed, as most, many digital agencies are, and so that kind of adds a little bit of a little bit of a conflict. Not conflict, but I don't know what you call it, but it's
I
not
work with a lot of
optimal.
virtual teams. I work with
Yeah,
teams all over
sure.
the world.
Yeah,
Did a session
yeah.
last night with a team in New Zealand.
There you go.
So maybe you should. Maybe you should. I
I know
I
I
should
need to
have
have a
that
conversation
call.
with
And
you.
I just
We
want you to
talked for
understand.
last
Yeah,
year. Yeah.
yeah. But certainly, I think implementing EOS, you can self-implement. You certainly can. A lot
Yeah,
of
it's
teams do.
hard.
In fact, of all of the companies that are implementing EOS in the world, probably only about 10% of them are actually working with a professional implementer. So 90% of
Mm-hmm.
the people doing EOS are implementing EOS by themselves. They're self-implementing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to get there faster, and
Yeah,
if you want to
yeah.
have a bigger impact,
Mm-hmm.
certainly professional implementers like myself are out there that
Mm-hmm.
can really help you put this system in place and understand it. And we have years of experience doing this. We've worked with hundreds of clients and hundreds of sessions,
Sure.
and can help you really put a system in place that will fundamentally change the way you operate your
Yeah.
business.
I think it's really important. I just think any moving company needs to implement a system in place for tracking and having the scorecards and having dashboards. I think it's very healthy. And again, more and more I work with moving companies, I see that gap. I really do. Some of the ones that are in the 5 to 10, they have these systems in place. They don't have EOS, but I think they're ripe for it. I think it's something that's missing is that entrepreneurial operating system for the business. And again, back to the core concept in the beginning of the conversation is what are you leaving behind? What are you building so that it doesn't rely on you solely? Can you step away and take a break if you get ill, something happens? Is it going to fall apart without you? So that's another part of the EOS is the fundamental part of it too, is to making sure that you're building something that you can either sell someday or hand off to a family member or, to the next generation. So,
Since becoming an EOS implementer, I've expanded my skills and my tool set, and I've actually become a certified exit planner, and
oh,
there's some
cool.
really interesting numbers around exit planning that I think that your audience should hear. Um, 80% of the average business owner's wealth is locked up in their business.
Huh.
50% of business exits are involuntary, but 100% of us will exit our business someday.
Well, yeah.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
the reasons that people involuntary exits their business are basically, we call them the 5 Ds: is death and disease or disability or divorce or distress. And there's another one, we call it the 6th D,
Mm-hmm.
is just dissolution. Like
Mm-hmm.
business owners are fatigued.
Mm-hmm.
This is hard work building a business.
It
And
is.
so, um, 80% of business owners out there right now have no written plan for a transition, how they're
Mm-hmm.
going to exit someday.
Yeah.
And the value of your business gets locked up in your business, your net worth and your that gets locked up in your business. And people think that selling your business is easy. It is not. It is hard. And only 20% of the value of your business is actually the revenue that you bring in.
Mm-hmm.
80% of your business capital, or if your business value is locked up in the intangible capitals.
Yeah.
Those are things like your team, your human capital, your customers capital, your structural capital, and your social capital.
Mm-hmm.
EOS maps very, very directly to building the human capital of your team, building the customer capital, building your structural capital, building that social capital to help you unlock the real wealth that you're trying to build. And
Mm-hmm.
so it fits very, very nicely because I believe that exit planning is
Right.
good business strategy.
Yeah, I agree. You need to be able to communicate to whoever might be buying the business or handing it off to you its true value. And the true value isn't how many trucks. I got two trucks in a building in a warehouse, but there's that, like you said, the intangibles on that is the value system of the team. You built out such a great process that
Sure.
the team loves to work there. You have super high customer ratings, and that's all built in because you've built out this system in place that is smooth. That's what somebody wants to buy. If I want to buy a truck, great, I'll buy a truck. I'll go somewhere else. I can buy a truck somewhere else. But if I'm going to buy a business, that's a whole other conversation. And I've seen that real time, even in my own digital marketing. I bought two companies myself. A third one failed because the guy did not have numbers. And I was like, I'm not just going to buy your list. I'm not buying your customer list because I don't know if they're coming back. They don't know me. Same thing when you're selling a moving company, you're selling, assets. And then they think this list of customers, because I've been in business for 15 years, look at these people like that is no indication of future investment and future work. And so, but if you've got that EOS in place, and I work with a really great company here in Houston, and they're growing, growing, growing. And I truly believe because they have that operating, they've got training manuals in place, they have regular meetings. I don't think they were EOS. In fact, I need to connect you to. But he's building this for his family. His wife's involved. He's got kids. So I think they have to connect the two, the operating system as well as the assets, make a more valuable business that you might want to sell or someone else might
And again,
inherit.
it's great to have options. You don't have to sell.
Sure.
It's great to have a
No.
great business structure where you have a team
Mm-hmm.
that loves this business and they want to be in it, whether you're the leader or not.
Mm-hmm.
They believe in the mission, they believe in the vision,
Mm-hmm.
and you have solid contracts with those people. Because when the CEO leaves, sometimes team leaves with them. You got to make sure that they have you have solid human capital in place. You got to make sure that they
Even
have solid customers.
Yeah, even taking, like you said, part of the one of the biggest reasons people leave a business or sell their business is they're overwhelmed. This helps that. You're not overwhelmed. You can take a break. You can go be with your family. You can have your weekends off if you have something that's in place like this. So it extends the business even more because now you don't feel so emotionally, physically tied to something that is just draining you. You get sick from that.
Yep. In EOS, we have a tool we call Delegate and Elevate, and we kind of map out 4 quadrants on a sheet, and we
Hmm.
map out all of the things that you do on a regular basis in your business. And those
Okay.
quadrants, we start to map them out in the quadrants. And the top left quadrant is doing the things that you love and that you're great at. The top
Yeah.
right quadrant is the things that you like and you're good at. The bottom left quadrant is doing the things that you don't like, but you're kind of good at them because you've been doing a while. And that bottom right quadrant is the things that you don't like to do and you're not good at. And
Right.
when you map those things out and you realize that you're spending most of your time in the bottom 2 quadrants of the things that you don't like and you're not really good at,
Hmm.
realize that you need to change your life and you need to change your business. You need to figure out how to delegate those things that you can make your life so much better if your business is your day to day is you focusing on things you love to do and that you're great at.
Right. Wow.
It makes your business so much more fun to run and
Right.
oh my gosh. So there are people
Awesome.
out there that love to do the things that you hate. There are
Hmm.
people out there that are great at the things that you're terrible at.
Hmm.
So we can hire those people to do those jobs that I'm not so great at.
Right. Wow. Well, thank you, Lyn. I appreciate that. Let me ask you, how can people reach out? How can they find you? What are some ways that we can, get that call?
Sure. I am Christina. I'm super easy to find. A really uncommon name. I'm the only Lyn Askin on the planet. So if you type Lyn Askin in any search engine, Google, you'll find
How
my my
lucky.
my LinkedIn, my Facebook, all of that stuff. You
Hmm.
can certainly connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook. You can email me. It's lyn.askin@eosworldwide.com. And then of course you could go to lynaskin.com/linktree to see all of my particular links. So
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah, connect. I'd love to talk to you about EOS. Again, this is
Yeah.
not a high pressure thing. I want to help you. I want to help you put this system in place. And I want you to have the EOS life. I want you to do what you love. I want you to do it
Mm.
with people you love. I want you to have a massive impact on your clients and on your employees and on your family. I want you to be appropriately compensated. And I want you to have time for other interests.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Lyn. I appreciate your time.
Oh my gosh,
Everybody,
my
if you've
pleasure.
got anything, please reach out to Lyn. I think he's a huge benefit if you're looking to grow your business and just get better at managing it and take breaks and take vacations and look to the future. I think this is a absolute opportunity not to miss. So for sure. And I'll put all the links in the show notes. I'll make sure I put links into the books, the traction books, and some of the other books that you mentioned, Lyn, as well as links to your link tree. But thank you again. Appreciate it.
So much fun. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Lyn. Bye
See you
bye.
soon.